one place lots of the things that you can get involved with on radio. There's an awful lot. I'm sure you know, obviously, about the contests and things that go on, but there's a lot more than that as well. We've got CW training. There's lots of nets that happen, some of them informal, some of them formal. And this slide that you're now hopefully looking at, you can see some of those things that are going on. Now, we've put this on the front page of our website, and we'll keep updating it. So if you've got a little net on 4 meters, 6 meters, or whatever frequency, whatever band, and whatever mode, and you'd like us to publicize it, there's a real pleasure in joining others with company at times like this, isn't there? Then please let me know. Drop me an email to that address, and we'll be happy to put it on that slide. And that will be on the front page of our website for the next coming weeks and months. Also, a couple of other notices for you. Steve G0KY has asked me to mention that unfortunately all of the events around the International Marconi Day have been completely cancelled now. Not just the big event that we were going to do at Caister, but the whole event. I think the organisers felt that was probably the safest thing to do. And Andy M0NKR has told me about the Club Championship contest, 80-metre SSB contest tomorrow night. That's Thursday, the 26th of March, between 8 and 9:30. It's a CQ WPX SSB contest for 48 hours on the 28th and 29th of March as well, this weekend. More details of that on our website, of course. And another reminder, by the way, the clocks go forward Saturday. I'm sure I won't be the last person to remind you of that, but it's worth remembering, especially, of course, if you're taking part in any of those contests. If you've got anything, though, you'd like us to publicise, vaguely radio related, and you'd like us to use our website and our newsletter to do that, then just drop me a line. We normally prepare the newsletters on Thursdays, and they're usually sent out on Fridays. Now, finally, before we actually introduce our speakers tonight, I want to tell you about next week here at this time, because it would have been our AGM, our annual general meeting, but of course that's had to be postponed. But I thought maybe there's a way, using technology, maybe using Skype or Zoom or something, which we can link lots of people together, and with the radio as well. So if you think there's a way we can do that, I'm looking for ideas, looking for different things that you've tried, maybe different types of technologies or whatever. Let's have some ideas forward, and then hopefully we can all meet here again next week at 7:30 as well. I think that's all for my notes for now. So I'm really now pleased to introduce you to the guys from, and I'm going to put my headphones on for this, for reasons, if you think about it, because there's a bit of a delay on this digital stream, so I need to listen to what they're going to say. And I'm really pleased, though, to introduce you to John and Andy of SDR Play. Let's bring them up, and let's hear you. Good evening, guys.
Good evening, David.
Hi.
And
Hi.
so you're on, Andy's on the left, by the way, and John is on the right. I hope that's correct.
I think so.
Andy.
John.
You are the founders of SDR Play.
Yeah.
Take it away. Tell us about how the company started, and then tell us about your products.
Okay, certainly will. Well, first of all, we'd both like to thank you, David, for all the hard work that's gone into making this event possible. We had very much hoped to come over and meet everyone in person, but obviously that wasn't to be, and hopefully this will be the next best thing. So I'm going to spend probably 20 minutes, half an hour, just giving an overview, telling you a bit about the whole company, not just Andy and me, but the rest of the team, and really going through what our products can do, and setting the scene for you to then be able to ask questions and learn a bit more about SDR and software-defined radio. So I have got some slides which hopefully will pop up now. Okay, can you see the slides, David?
Can't at the moment, John. No, don't worry. I'm sure they'll come.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's a little bit more complicated than it used to be, and don't worry, you won't be the first speaker to have seen that. All right. Okay, I can see your computer screen now, actually.
That's
and there's
fine.
the slide. And if you can make that, I guess, play your presentation.
Yep. Hang on. Okay.
There we go. Yes.
Is that filling the screen?
It is. If you could get the little picture of me out somewhere, I'm sure they don't want to see me in this. That's
okay.
Lovely.
Right. Here we go then. So, introducing SDR Play. So, we are a British company. We've been going 6 years now, and it started as a joint venture supported by a chip company, Mirix. We are 7 employees, and Andy was one of the founding members on the software side. We have a mixture of chip specialists, and about just 6.5 years ago, I was approached by our CEO, Simon, who really wanted someone from the amateur community to team up with some other guys from the semiconductor industry who had developed some pretty good SDR technology for computers and some high-end mobile phones, and wanted to apply it to the hobby market. So we started really with an architecture which Andy was part of in terms of the software, another guy, Ian, on the hardware, and about 6 years ago we introduced our very first product. We actually design everything here in the UK, and we subcontract the manufacturing also here in the UK, and we're a registered UK company with headquarters in Alton is our kind of base address. We are a virtual company, so we're used to Skype, and we all work from home and have our own labs and come together as needed. But it's, as you'll find later on, it's very much a community, and probably 80% of our customers traditionally have been from the hobbyist area. So I believe some of you may be very new to SDR. Just a couple of words. What is an SDR? Software-defined radio. So this is a radio communication system where the components that were traditionally implemented in hardware, so things like mixers, filters, amplifiers, modulators, and so on, are implemented by software on a computer. So that puts enormous challenges on that system. And in the real world, you have to really decide the spectrum you want to receive, and then find ways of presenting it to the state-of-the-art software and hardware that's available today. This is just by way of illustration of the kind of architecture that exists in an SDR receiver. Over on the left, you'll see we've added a bunch of real-world filters, hardware filters, that can strip out the interfering signals from unwanted broadcast stations and very powerful stations. There's a way of powering remote amplifiers back up the antenna. That's the bias T block at the bottom. And then one of the things that's been a focus for SDR Play is designing the very best possible bank of front-end hardware filters, such that depending on what frequency you're looking at, the tuner gets as good a signal as is possible to then go on to the ADC block, which is the analog to digital conversion, at a really good, sufficient resolution to present a clean digital stream of signal down the USB cable to the computer. So that's just give a sense for those of you perhaps not familiar with SDR that the hardware that we're focusing on is doing what you see here in hardware, and then all the rest is in software. So it's really a hardware and software working in harmony to provide a true general coverage receiver capability. We have currently 3 products: the Rsp 1A, which is the entry-level product, which I showed there, which is a single antenna. So it's just literally got 2 connections, a USB to the computer and an antenna connection. We have the Rsp DX, which is has multiple antennas, and then finally the dual tuner, top of the range Rsp Duo, and I'll talk a bit more about each of those. But fundamental to all of them is our own SDR Uno software, which we took over from an Italian developer 3 or 4 years ago. It used to be marketed as Studio One, and actually cost something like $179. You had to purchase a license to use it. We've taken that and repurposed it specifically to go hand in hand with our hardware. And again, for those who may not have seen SDR software in action, if you can imagine, that is the display, the kind of display that you get on your PC screen. And the thing you'll notice immediately compared to a traditional radio is obviously the visualization of those signals. So just going through the different SDR Play products, the Rsp 1A, which the prices there are the normal retail price from our website with VAT, but no shipping. The key thing is what you're getting here is a clean coverage between 1 kilohertz and 2 gigahertz with up to 10 megahertz of visibility anywhere across the spectrum. Single antenna port, and I've already shown you the block diagram, all those front-end filters, broadcast band notch filters, and so on. And obviously the SDR Uno software. There's additional spectrum analyzer software available from a third party. There are things like, for those of you into GNU radio, there's a source block for the Rsp 1A. We support a Raspberry Pi SD card image so that you can run other simpler SDR software on a Raspberry Pi. If you want to just attach this to an existing transceiver to provide a panoramic spectrum adapter or pan adapter, this is all you need. And as we try to encourage the next generation to explore the excitement of radio, this is probably a really good gift for them. And actually, at the moment, with everyone maybe having more time on their hands, maybe it's a good way to encourage people who haven't played with radio for 40 or 50 years to come back to the hobby. This is an example of GNU radio, which is a way of building in software architectures for radio signal processing. So if you like, there is a source block or a representation for each of the RSPs to allow you to try out different types of software building blocks. So that's something that's just starting to gather momentum. With our own SDR Uno software, you've got the capability to do real-time power measurements because it's fully calibrated to the hardware. So that means on any of our RSPs that what is presented at the 50 ohm input in terms of dBm power levels is within 1 dBm accuracy. And more than that, you can actually log your data. So you can actually set up time intervals anywhere from 1 second to 1800 seconds and take a reading and build a log file, which you could then output to an Excel spreadsheet for analysis. And the guys at the RSGB EMC group, for example, are quite like that capability where you can set up some equipment and just let it run and see where the offending signals pop up and how strong they are. This is the third-party spectrum analyzer software, which is available for the 1A and the Duo. The DX should be coming soon. And this, for those of you familiar with spectrum analyzers, has all the normal sample and hold and span and frequency control that you'd expect in a spectrum analyzer, and again calibrated in terms of power levels. The Rsp DX is the key difference here is a couple of things. One is it's got multiple antennas, which really come into their own if you're into innovating with antennas and trying to quickly switch from one antenna to another to compare the differences. It also has the advantage for someone who really wants a true general coverage receiver from long wave up to 2 gigs, where you can have 2 or 3 broadband antennas capable of pretty much spanning that whole spectrum. You may have a active mag loop, perhaps for the sort of HF and below. You may have some kind of special arrangement for VHF, and then perhaps a discone to take you up into the UHF and beyond. Or maybe the discone covers everything above HF, and then you have a patch antenna or something specialized for satellite reception up at 1.6, 1.7 gigs. Some of you may have heard of the Rsp2, the Rsp2 Pro, which is very, very popular. This is basically an updated version of the Rsp2 Pro. It comes in a metal box. And one of the other things we've done is really optimize the performance down at 8 MF and LF and below, so below 2 megahertz. So that does take in top band as well, where the traditional way of doing it sometimes, just due to the dynamic range and you need that extra. You also have all the broadcast stations down there, and you can run into some difficulties where we have this enhanced HDR mode, which is the high dynamic range mode for below 2 megahertz, and we've also added an extra filter for below 500 kilohertz. There's other things like an external clock input for up at UHF, maybe where you want extra accuracy. You can put a GDS, a GPS Duo clock as an input to get even better accuracy, frequency accuracy. When you're in the high dynamic range, we actually provide these bands, which Andy will come on to talk a little bit more about. But what this means is you have something like 10 different bands to choose from. Obviously, you've got the medium wave, long wave broadcast bands, and then extra bands for top band, for some of the NDB bands above and below 500 kilohertz. So that's the DX. Then we have the a dual tuner version, and this is very exciting in terms of the sort of new software that we're working on at the moment to really go the next step with this. So with a Rsp Duo, if you imagine it, it's really 2 receivers in one. Because everything still relies on a USB interface, you can either see 10 megahertz in one go, anywhere from 1 kilohertz up to 2 gigahertz, or you can have 2 totally separate 2 megahertz slots. So you could actually be on 70 centimeters with one tuner and on top band with the other, should you want to. I'll give some more practical examples of that in a minute. But the key thing is these are 2 independent tuners. So great for kind of simultaneous cross-band working or monitoring other bands during a contest, that kind of thing. I mentioned antenna comparisons. This one, you can actually see in real time the 2 antennas, how they behave in real time at the same time. We also have the ability to do diversity reception. again, I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Like the RSPDX, this has 3 ports, but this one has a high impedance port. That little green plug there on the picture allows you to connect a long wire or a balanced feed directly to the to that tuner 1 input. Again, it's got the external clock input, and it's also got an external clock output, so you can actually daisy chain multiple RSPs, duos, should you want to. So basically, the diversity modulation capability, at the moment, we've really just got in SDR Uno the capability to do some noise cancelling and signal enhancement options. This just demonstrates 2 widely spaced bands. So you can see we have like 2 simultaneous radios. This one's got one on 40 and one up at aircraft band. For those of you into air traffic control, you can simultaneously be listening to the air traffic control as well as up on 1.090 gigs. You can be analyzing the ADSB telemetry data direct from the aeroplanes. I mentioned diversity tuning. When you're in diversity mode, what is automatically done once you select that little diversity button is you get a maximum ratio combination where the little diagram over on the right, that little rosette, represents the relative amplitude, that's the length of the line coming from the center, versus the and the phase is the direction that it's pointing. And you have 2 options here. You can either allow, by pressing diversity, you can allow it to automatically, where it says apply auto, find the optimum, the best possible combination of the 2 signals. So that gives a signal enhancement. And this is great if you've got like fading conditions or fast moving like sporadic E and stuff, where relative to each other, multiple paths may be coming to your 2 antennas, and you can actually get a few dBs enhanced and smoothed out listening. The other thing that's very effective is interference rejection. So if you imagine you have one antenna, on this example we were using a dipole on tuner 1 and a little mini whip on tuner 2. So if you imagine the good antenna was tuner 1, so this has got the wanted signal, but probably still quite a bit of unwanted other signals and noise. And then on the little mini whip on tuner 2, you've connected what is more of the unwanted noise source. And then when you go into diversity mode, you can actually manually go to the opposite of the maximum ratio combination. You're actually subtracting all the unwanted signal away from the good one. And there's some very nice YouTube videos demonstrating how effective this can be for diversity cancelling of local interference. So we can come back and explore particular elements of all this, what people are interested in or how well it works, or what you might want to do with this kind of receiver in a minute. But I thought I'd just, before we turn to more about the software, just say a little bit more about the fact we've got a comparison chart which should help summarize the different features that I've talked about in terms of what is on the Rsp1A, the entry-level part that we've tried to keep as low cost as possible. It comes in a rugged plastic case, albeit spray coated inside for shielding, and then the RSPDX, and then our top of the range Rsp Duo. So that's a bit of a focus on the hardware. I'm now going to turn it over to Andy just to talk a bit about SDR Uno and what you're seeing in front of you now, and a little bit more about what the roadmap will be. So, Andy, do you want to pick it up?
Sure. I don't know if you can see me, or are we still?
Not yet.
I need to stop sharing, don't I?
Yeah, that's it. I think we're getting there. While we're just bringing up Andy here live, just to mention that we are also streaming this on YouTube at the moment. If you want to know the channel, you'll obviously be listening to me and watching it on Facebook. If you have a look at the link that's on the front of our Facebook page, for some people they may find this better to go to YouTube. Anyway, over to you, Andy.
Hi, thanks, David. Well, it's great to virtually be here. It would have been nicer to actually be there, but I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to come up and see you guys in the future. Just a little talk about the software that we produce. The RSPs work with a range of software. You'll probably be familiar with things like SDR Console from Simon Brown, HDSDR, a number of Linux and Raspberry Pi type applications, and we do support all of those via a library. SDR Uno is really it's a software that we give away for any RSP user, and it's really tightly linked with the hardware. So everything that we add is designed to give the best performance with an RSP. And a real good example of that, I'll just share a screen, and I'll talk a little bit about the software itself. So hopefully you can see that. It's just a snapshot of the SDR Uno screen.
Yes, we can see that fine, Andy.
So one of the features that we recently added was a scanner, and that was designed specifically around the RSP, its tuning speed, its capabilities, and so everything that we do is really focused on showing you the best of an RSP. Currently it's Windows only, but we do have a longer term plan to move SDR Uno over to Linux and also Mac platform as well. I just run through a couple of these things. It's a multi-panel system, so you'll notice that there's lots of these windows. They all do they don't lock together in terms of you can move them together, but we have ways of being able to sort of frame the whole package for whatever resolution screen that you have. I don't know if you can actually see this window. Can you see it? Because I'm not seeing that. Is that live? Is that?
I think so. Well, we can see. I imagine it's the one I'm looking at. We can see your cursors moving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Probably just move the cursor quite slowly because it takes a while to.
Okay. And so some of these windows will be familiar to you. Some of them not. The one at the top here, the RX control panel, was really designed to look like a transceiver control panel. So you've got the buttons on the right, you've got the keypad on the right, where you can enter frequencies, and also to select different bands and different modes. You've got the different tuning modes, and then you've got other panels which may be not so familiar. The one next to it, the EX control panel, has got a lot of tuning, a lot of extra functionality, notch filters, noise reduction. There's a lot of post-processing that SDR Uno does to really deliver what was considered, certainly the people who bought Studio One, considered to have the best, some of the best audio post-processing, and we still hear that today from people who use it. So I think probably what the best thing is for me to do is to talk a little bit about where we're about a couple of the features. So specifically for for amateur radio users, one of the nice things that we've done with SDR Uno is that we have a concept called band framing. Most SDRs are quite wide open, and so you get 2 megahertz of spectrum or 10 megahertz of spectrum, but these aren't particularly useful for amateur radio users who want to look at just the 40 meter band or just the 80 meter band. And so we have a concept called band framing, and we've selected most of the bands that we can actually cram into the software. And so when you select a band, it will frame the band on the screen specifically to just that band. And so when you're sort of moving between the bands, it gives you a more useful view rather than, some of these bands are only a few hundred kilohertz wide. So rather than giving you a 2 megahertz view with just the small band in the middle, it's a much more useful display to actually have this concept of band framing. So that was something that we did quite early on, and it's very popular. With the Rsp DX, as John said, you get an extra panel of bands which are specifically below 2 megahertz, as John mentioned, which you don't get those with the other devices. So that's why this panel only shows the ones that you get with the 1A and the Duo. And a lot of people ask us about feature requests, where we're going with the software, why does it do certain things. There's a lot of history in SDR Uno. It's as John mentioned, we acquired it about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was obviously designed for it was designed for a specific purpose, and it was designed in a specific way, and it was purely aimed at a Windows platform. And so over time, we've got this roadmap, and we do things in Uno to make things like the cross-platform that bit easier. And so each version of SDR Uno will have changes in it that make going to cross-platform that bit easier. People say, well, cross-platform is a long way away. Well, it is, but if we can kind of focus and get on with doing some of these interim versions, then cross-platform comes a lot quicker than you might think. The version that I'm actively working on at the moment is 1.4. It's quite exciting. We've got a new plugin API, which is working, and we've sent out developer kits to a number of people that are interested in developing plugins. So we're hoping we've developed a couple of test plugins as well, and we're hoping that will encourage a kind of an ecosystem. It'll be open to anybody. Anybody can write. We'll give the source code away for the plugins, so people can use them as a starting point, and you can do some quite nice things. So you can get access to every aspect of SDR Uno. So you can get access to the input IQ stream, the audio IQ stream, all the buttons and functionality, and so you can write your own post processors. And so we've got people that are actively writing demodulators right now, and other functionality, and also some connectivity applications such that it makes it easier to get into things like digital decoders. So it's quite exciting. It's out in beta form to these developers, as I said, and so we're getting quite near. The automatic LO adjustment system is the first version of that was sort of tested today, so we're getting quite close with that. So basically, the default going forward now will just be a VFO. You won't have to worry about the concept of LO, what it means, how it relates to the VFO. Literally, you just focus on the frequency that you're interested in, and you don't have to worry about, have I got separation for the LO? Is it going to interfere with my signal? All of that is taken care for you. So you just worry about the frequency that you're interested in. We're having the ability to be able to start SDR Uno with just a WAV file. So you can record IQ data and then on one system, and then you can start SDR Uno with that recorded data on another system without having an RSP connected. That's going to be very useful for a lot of people who record a lot of data, but they want to process it somewhere else where they don't particularly have an RSP available. We've obviously got some bug fixes and some other, and there was an issue with the stereo wideband FM volume distortion when you went above 50%, so we fixed that as well. I won't go through every single option that we're doing here, but just pick out some highlights. After 1.4, you'll see things like we're going to have quite an upgraded recording schedule. We'll call it a scheduling function. So at the moment, you can just record IQ data. You specify a start and a stop, and that's all it does. So going forward, we're going to have quite more of a sophisticated. You'll be able to do multiple records, and you'll be able to record IQ, or you'll be able to record the audio. So it's going to be a lot more sophisticated going forward, a lot more useful for people who literally maybe you just want to scan and record, just record the audio data. You don't want huge amounts of IQ data, clogging up your hard drive. So we're going to have stuff like that. That's going to be very useful. Another useful feature that is a long time coming is the remote operation. So being able to we'll have a TCP server that runs on all the platforms that we support. So you could have like a Raspberry Pi with your RSP and your antenna, and then you could operate that remotely via SDR Uno that's in the shack or a different location. And again, that will work across low bandwidth networks as well as high bandwidth networks. The problem with processing IQ data is that the files and the data streams get very big very quickly. So we've got some ways of being able to reduce that data such that it'll work across internet connections as well as local area networks. Let's see some other. I mean, you can obviously ask us some questions about some of the stuff that you've seen here, or maybe some of the stuff that you think is missing. We can have a chat about that. DX clusters, people have asked us about that. So a nice thing about the plugin system is that you can annotate on the main Spectrum display. So now we can have call signs or frequencies or whatever you want displayed on the SP1 display. And we've got some developers who are interested in developing some plugins that literally allow you to catalog call signs on certain frequencies. And we'll just have some more usability. We'll have some more usability functions as we go through. But the main one that we're driving towards is the cross-platform support. So SDR Uno will run on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And we will try to provide as much of the functionality that currently exists on the Windows platform on those other platforms. Obviously, it will look slightly different because of GUI sets and stuff like that. But we're going to try to maintain the core functionality of Uno with a slightly different look. And so that's kind of where we're really going. I've kind of got a to-do list on SDR Uno that's a few years long. So I'm not short of stuff to be doing. But if anybody has any comments or suggestions for us, you can send them to us at feedback@sdrplay.com. We can't. We get so many, we can't reply to them, but we promise that we do read all of them and we do consider all of them. But if you don't get a response, it's not because we're ignoring you. It's just because we just get so many.
Plus, of course, tonight, Andy, they've got a chance to ask you and maybe to get a reply from you fairly shortly as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Ask us anything, and hopefully we can answer all the questions. But so that's kind of really what I'm responsible for. I am responsible for all the platforms. At the moment, we've got beta developments going that are out there for the new API for all the different platforms, and we've got things like cubic SDR support coming for the Rsp Duo, so you can do master slave and dual tuner, and also RSP DX support for things like the TCP server. So there's lots of software that are coming, not just SDR Uno. We focus on SDR Uno, but we do try to spread the effort around for other platforms that people are interested in as well.
Okay, sounds really good.
That's good. Thanks, Andy.
It'd be lovely to see you both now, I think, if that's... Oh, brilliant.
There you go.
Wow.
And so I'm just going to finish off with just a few more examples, and then we'll be able to throw it open for some questions. So let me just share the screen here.
Okay, yeah, we can see everything at the moment.
Okay.
But if we can see you too, I think... Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, I just want to go through these last few slides. So we touched on quite a few of the other areas, but for those of you who've only really sort of explored the amateur part of the spectrum, because it's a general coverage receiver, there's a lot more to explore. In some ways, it's a bit like a Swiss Army knife, but I just highlight a couple of things. In addition to the things like pan adapters and the stuff that's more around amateur radio, there's weather faxes, there's more and more sort of satellite stuff to be picked up, some fantastic high resolutions environmental satellite images, and as we move more towards the Internet of Things, under 2 gigahertz, there's quite a lot of activity in the various ISM bands with interesting signals to be monitored and looked at. And then, of course, over on the right-hand side, a whole bunch of things around the whole sort of teaching, and we're starting to do a bit more with universities, and the RSPs are a nice kind of workhorse for that. I'll just flick through a few more slides. Obviously, we work closely with the big three in terms of pan adapter, and there's a lot of knowledge out there in terms of whatever rig you've got, how to safely tie it up so that you don't blast the front end during transmit. And of those of you who go to Friedrichshafen in the past and Newark, you'll often see our RSPs being used as a pan adapter on the various other transceiver manufacturers' stands. I mentioned satellite. There's Inmarsat signals are now quite easy to pick up with, and I'd like to wave the flag here for one of our channel partners, SDR Kits, who have a very nice patch antenna solution, complete with a kind of extension lead that's recently come out, because it's the original one was only a 5-meter lead, which can be restrictive if you want to put the patch antenna further away. We would have been demonstrating this tonight amongst many other demos, but wasn't to be. But like I say, SDR kits for patch antennas. Obviously, again, something that would come over better with a live demo is this idea of multiple VFOs, even within a single 10 megahertz spectrum on any of the RSPs. You can have these multiple radios, virtual radios set up, and each of them can be being piped through a virtual audio cable to a different digital decode of whatever you're trying to do. Mentioned pan adapter. This is a sort of a globe image that you can get from the GOES satellites, and I think I mentioned the community in all of this, and it's been a tremendous journey for us. We started out with the brilliant architecture of my colleagues and their conceptual designs for a really good general purpose SDR receiver at an affordable cost, and sort of threw it out there really. And then we had a lot of learning to do, but we were very, very lucky to have early on some very, very good people to help encourage us and guide us and help set up some of these sort of social media channels, which have been fantastic as a kind of support group, self-supporting in multiple languages around the world. So we've got we've had all that set up. We then have built up, based on their requests, a library of applications videos. And so there's a YouTube channel, and we've actually put it all in a searchable catalogue that's on our website. And we've included in there a mixture of our own videos and some good videos by third parties. Our colleague in America, Mike, KD2KOG, has a very informal YouTube channel called SDR Play Ham Guides. And he actually will respond directly to people saying, could you just show us exactly how this works in a new video? And, a few days later, up will pop another video. There's our own Facebook news page. Slight problem.
We have just lost a bit of sound then. Are you still there,
Don't
John?
worry, I'm still here. I'm
Okay.
just wondering why it came to an abrupt end there. Let me just go back to this. So that's our Facebook news page. I think I've got a gremlin in the slideshow here. I'll just have to show it in this format, but you hopefully can see over on the right, the top right in the right-hand picture is represents our community Facebook group, which is an independent Facebook group. It's actually up over 12,000 members now. And there's also, for those people who don't like Facebook, a couple of forums now. There's a new one started, SDR Play groups.io, which is, again, some people prefer that. So again, lots of other enthusiasts publishing information and providing technical answers to other users' questions. You could always, whether you buy your SDR Play RSPs from a distributor, a reseller, we will always provide direct support if needed. If you're having difficulty, you can come to us and we try to respond very quickly. Between ourselves and our colleagues in America, we cover pretty much a sort of 18-hour day, so you can get a lot of help with that. And whether I'm hearing an additional voice.
Sorry,
there,
that was me. I'm
okay.
just doing something on the radio, and I beg your pardon.
That's
I
okay.
am listening to what you're saying, but I'm also trying to just try something in a moment. But
No
sorry
problem.
about that.
Okay,
My apologies.
and yeah, I don't want to do too much of a sales pitch, but obviously you can buy via one of our distributor resellers, and there's a link on the web page, or you can go straight to our purchasing page. And we do have, for the Norfolk Club members, a special offer, I think, that David can communicate separately. But
yeah, I'll be putting that in this week's newsletter to all Norfolk Amateur Radio Club newsletter subscribers. So if you're on our website then and already subscribed, or you can do that in the next 24 hours and you'll get an email which will give you a special offer as well, which I think you guys, if you'd have come to us as it was originally planned, then you'd have brought some with us and you'd been able to buy one then. So we thought this was very reasonable. So.
Okay, so anyway, that's the formal. Hope it didn't go on too long for you, but hopefully it's given you a sense of where we're coming from. But now it's a chance for people to ask us any questions.
We've got a few questions lined up, so maybe we can see your faces, please. You need to go and refer to your any of the slides for anything specific. So let's first, one of the questions that we've been sent from Steve G0KYA, he asks, can you do timed recordings with SDR Uno?
Yeah, you can. You can do them right now. At the moment, it will only take a single recording at a time. So you can specify a start and a stop. and it's only going to record the input IQ stream. So depending on the amount of spectrum that you want to record at the time, that could sort of eat up a lot of disk space quite quickly. Not in the version that we're releasing imminently, but the one after that, we're going to have a much more sophisticated scheduling system where you'll be able to do multiple records over different days. Maybe you want to record a certain amount of spectrum at the same time every week, and you'll also be able to record the audio as well as. So you'll be able to specify whether you want to record the input spectrum, because you might want to then process that later in SDR Uno, or you just want to record the audio, and so you'll have the ability to do both. So it'd be much more sophisticated, and that's coming in the version after the one that we're just about to publish.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy, for that. We've got a question now from Lorna. Oh, sorry. From Nev M0NFY, is the Raspberry Pi image the only option, or can the software be loaded via apt from a PPA or the repository? On behalf of that was from Nev M0NFY.
So right now, the only thing that we really do with the Raspberry Pi is we kind of collate all the software that's out there that works with an RSP, and we kind of put it together for people to. It's like a single point that people can download and just run. We have a lot of people who want to use Raspberry Pis, they want to use Linux, but they don't know how to build stuff. They don't know how to compile, or they can follow the scripts to build the code, but if it doesn't work, if they're missing dependencies, they kind of throw their hands up and say, why isn't this stuff just easy? And so really all we've done with the image, the idea of the image was just to collate all these things together, build them for people, deliver them as it's just an image with executables on, so then people can just plug it in and run it. You can only get the API that we provide. You can only get that via our website. But going forward, I would like to deliver that via the types of systems that you've described, APT and PPA repositories. We'll probably have to do that as self-hosted, but that is something. But largely speaking, the software that's on there isn't ours. It's only the library that's ours. So if you want those other bits of software separately, you'd have to contact the people who write them, I'm afraid.
Okay. One of the questions I had, actually, if nobody else asked it, is the software free? And if you buy one of these from you today, is the software going to be free for the indefinite future, or do you just get a year subscription, or how does it work? So
once you buy an RSP, you get the API for free forever, and SDR Uno is free. It's just all of these applications are just free downloads from our website. And there's other free software, as I mentioned, Simon Brown's SDR Console, HDSDR, Cubic SDR. All of this software is a free download.
A good example of that was the scanning software that came out last year, really, really popular. Even the very first customer who bought the very original, long since obsoleted RSP1 could enjoy the benefits of that scanner all those years later. So you're actually buying, an ongoing living thing,
I think that's just the important point there. So even though we have some obsolete, discontinued products, the RSP1 and now the RSP2, in SDR Uno, whenever we do an update to that, we always make sure it works with the whole range. So we always make sure it works with the 1 and the 2 and the 2 Pro, as well as the current products. It's very important to us.
Okay. All right, brilliant. I've got another question. I just lost one off the bottom of my screen. You see this happening on telly, don't you? This is why it happens. Anyway, I'll get that back in a moment. This is from Rick M7 GMT. Would it be possible to control SDR Uno via MIDI using the plugin API?
No. Well, okay. Let me go back. If you could write a plugin that interpreted MIDI commands and then turn them into commands for the plugin. I mean, that's very possible. So you could write like a MIDI interpreter, the nice thing about the plugin system is that it is literally that. It's a way to either get data from SDR Uno, IQ data. You can get the power levels. You can get the SNR level. You can control every aspect of SDR Uno, and so really, you should just sort of see that as an extension of any code that you want to write. So you can write demodulators, digital decoders. You could write interfaces. You could write MIDI interface. You could write a CAT interface, even though SDR Uno has already got one. But you could. The idea is that you can write a block of code to do anything, but you've got the ability to also then get all the power of SDR Uno. Really, SDR Uno from this point on becomes a framework. If you don't want the SDR Uno windows to be visible, you want to write your own Spectrum viewer, but you want the power of SDR Uno and its audio capabilities, you can still do that. So we will be doing some of our own plugins, but if you wanted a MIDI controller, you could write one.
I don't think I could, but I'm sure some people could. All right, another question. This is all. Some of these are coming from YouTube as well. By the way, a reminder that we are streaming this to YouTube as well, seeing how that goes. And in fact, it just reminds me that I had a message from Ken and Shirley who are watching it on YouTube, and they've casted it, if that's the way you can say it, or they're casting it to their big TV in the lounge. So there we go. There's a possibility, and they say the quality is really good as well. So anyway, I've got another question here then from YouTube. This is Jacob 2E0FTX. How future-proof is the hardware?
Do you want to take that one, John?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So when you think about future-proofing hardware, given that more and more of the world is going digital, then by definition an SDR receiver is very future-proof in that as standards evolve, we've seen all the standards like FT8 come along, new ways of decoding. So the same hardware is really future-proof in terms of as yet to be invented new ways of encrypt of creating signals. So in that sense, it's very good. We do have a top limit. We only go up to 2 gigahertz, and that is actually a historic, for historic reasons with the chipset that we are using at the moment. Now, longer term, we may come out with products that go beyond 2 gigahertz. One thing we're looking at is potentially some kind of block converters and ways of covering those higher frequencies. So in that sense, that might future-proof interest above 2 gigahertz. It's too early to say or commit anything at this point. But USB 3 has come along, which is backwards compatible with USB 2. Because it's a well-documented API, even over time, as maybe computer architectures evolve and maybe super new, almost free, serious processing engines come along, it should be perfectly easy to interface to an RSP that you buy today. So I think you'll still be able to do a lot more with it than perhaps with a fixed hardware architecture. That 405 line black and white TV really can't do much for you today.
No, that's very true. Another question. This has come from Paul 2E0NXL. He says, great talk so far, worth waiting another week for. He says, thank you very much, because he now has a better understanding of which one to get. So thanks very much. Got a message from Mike G8EY. Will SDR Uno remain compatible with the Rsp 2 Pro? We may have already answered that, but that was a question from a little while ago.
Yeah.
Yep, that will. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul G4ZBA, re the MIDI, will they build IF, I guess that's interface, for DJ controller, etc.?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, MIDI controllers are a very useful way of being able to have had hardware control to the software. When we do the shows, Newark and such like, we do try to show different controllers, different sort of knobs and dials that we've been able to kind of get hold of and try. We add hotkey controls to SDR Uno so that you can, most of these controllers will use hotkeys. So you can sort of get sort of a generic control with the different controllers. In fact, the guys at Martin Lynch gave me a Shuttle Express controller, which I thought was really, really nice. I thought I had it. I've sort of tidied it away, but it's a really nice sort of controller that sits in your hand. I contacted the manufacturer and said, "Have you got an API for us to use?" And they said, "No, not yet." So that's really unfortunate. So hopefully when that does come available, we can maybe do something about integrating it. The only controller that is fully integrated into Uno right now is the Teammate series of controllers, Teammate 1 and Teammate 2. They are quite expensive controllers. They've got a lot of functionality, but I hope that over time we can maybe add some more functionality. But again, with the plugin system, somebody could take a controller interface, create that in a plugin, and then link that to Uno. So anybody. So in theory, once we've got the plugin system released to everybody, and if anybody has plugins, if anybody is interested in developing a plugin, they can contact us and we'll get them a kit that they can start developing with. But you can write a plugin to virtually do anything with Uno. So it's a great way of doing a controller.
Okay, well now I'm going to try something this time. This is just a one-off, but if this works, we'll use it in the future. I'm now going to call in M0UJD. This is G7URP. Oh, I don't know if we can hear him.
He can't hear them. They can't hear him.
Thanks, G7URP. Okay, well that seemed to work. I hope you could hear the question. Could you?
They can.
No, we couldn't. No, no.
You couldn't hear it. Ah,
No.
right.
No, no.
Here's the right. Okay, I'm going to need to do that again then.
Can you
Let's
hold
see
your
if there's a
mic?
way of doing it. No, I'll think of another way of doing it. Okay, Kevin, M0UJD, G7URP. We got something. There's a lot of. If you think about, for everybody at home now, if you think about the communications here with stuff coming in and then going out, we've got a lot of things to patch and work out. And this was just a trial. We hope we can make this work. But clearly with a cabling and making a direct connection, you probably heard Kevin's question nicely at home, but my guess at the end of a Skype line didn't. So we'll work that out for next time. But I'm now going to ask Kevin to go again. M0UJD, G7URP, could you repeat your question, please, Kevin?
Yeah, M0UJD returning. I'll try and repeat more or less what I said. I'll say good evening, guys, and thanks very much. And at 8 o'clock this evening, there were 64 people watching. I think that was the peak that I saw, and it's fantastic. So thank you. I've got two questions for you. The first of which is, are you ever likely to do a transceiver version? And the second of which is, what sort of spec of computer are we likely to need to run some of the software? I suppose the other thing would be, is it ever likely to be transferable to a phone? But we shall see. Back to you, David, and thanks very much. I shall listen to the reply through Facebook. G7URP and the group from M0UJD.
Over to
Very
you,
good.
guys.
Okay, well, this is G4ABQ. I'll take that first one and maybe pass the second question on the computer spec over to Andy in a moment. So, yeah, we've been asked many times, when are we going to do something about a transceiver? We're always looking at future products. There's nothing at all on the horizon right now. One of the challenges with the transceiver is really optimizing it for a particular group of users. Once you start talking about transmission, across such a wide spectrum as we cover with the receiver, you get into a lot of issues all the way from regulations. There's a lot of country specific requirements. It's a big jump for a relatively small company where we're just 7 people at the moment. So, but it's something we talk about. So again, ideas are always welcome, and potentially at the QRP end of things, something might be possible. Obviously, there are other SDR companies out there which have some form of transmit capability, so we're aware of that, and keep the inputs coming, really. So that's really all we can say on the transceiver side. Andy, do you want to talk a bit about what spec people should sort of look?
And actually, Andy, just to interject, if you don't mind, because it links in really perfectly. Kevin asked a question which Matt Reeve, M0 PTO, has also asked: will there ever be a way to plug in one of your units into an Android phone for a more mobile receiver? And he also makes a cheeky comment about iPhones as well. So an Android or an iPhone, do you ever see you producing something for that, Andy?
Okay, so let's we talk about the specs required. Really, because we have such a wide range of input spectrum available to us, really the spec of the computer or the host device, let's say, really depends on what you're trying to do with it. Things like a Raspberry Pi or even a Windows tablet is absolutely fine for 2 megahertz. But if you want to go up to 10 megahertz of spectrum and you want to post-process that, then you do need something with a bit more processing power. The laptop that I take around and do all the shows with me is an i3 with 8 gigabytes of RAM, runs everything very, very, very well. I mean, I also have Windows tablets that work fine at 2 megahertz of spectrum, Raspberry Pis. I have all sorts of very small, low power devices that all work with sort of 2, 3, 4 megahertz of spectrum. It's when you go up higher than that that you start to need more processing power. Steve, one of our technical guys, has done a video, I believe, John, which is on our application catalog that you can find, or on our YouTube channel. He's actually done a video where he talks about the different specs required and his view of what a sensible sort of machine to get is if you're looking to get a machine for SDR. Because don't forget, you've got the processing for the input stream. If you then want to run a logger, if you then want to do digital decoding, you've got to kind of work out the extra load that those applications are gonna create as well. Now regarding phones, so we already have a driver that works on Android. If you go to the Google App Store, you can find the SDR Play driver. It currently works with an application called SDR Touch. So you need the driver installed, which is running as an open beta at the moment. You install that, and then you get SDR Touch. There is a free and a paid for version of SDR Touch. I'm not quite sure the differences. It may be a time thing. I'm not quite sure. But if you go on the Google App Store and look for SDR Touch, you can see the different versions on there. So the process is you have to have an Android device that supports OTG cables, so on-the-go cables. So as long as it supports an OTG cable, connect it up to the port, connect the RSP, start the SDR Play driver, start SDR Touch, and then away you go. Because of such a wide range of different Android devices, we've had comments from all that range from it doesn't work to it's brilliant. So, it will probably depend on the type of phone you have or Android device you have, and its support for OTG type devices. So that already exists now. That's it. That exists for the RSP 1, 1A, 2 Pro. We have another driver that is in development that should be ready pretty soon that will support the Duo in single tuner mode only and the RSP DX. So we'll get that out as soon as we can. But right now, the Android support is for the 1, the 1A, the 2, and the 2 Pro.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say so iPhones is quite an interesting case. So I had this great idea that we could use the USB port on an iPhone via the camera interface. So I kind of bought all these adapters and connectors, and but by the time I got round to actually looking at it, Apple locked the interface. So I don't know of a way of being able to access an SDR via the iPhone USB interface. If somebody knows how to do it, that might be an interesting discussion. But what you can do, obviously, at the moment is you can run software on there that either gets an IQ stream from a TCP source, or you can run things like TeamViewer or Remote Desktop, or some other remote way of being able to remotely connect to a system that's got an RSP or any SDR, frankly, to it. But
I was going to just to illustrate what Andy was saying there. I'm just going to share my screen again and show you this. We've mentioned once or twice this applications and support catalog, and I thought I'd just type in spec, because in terms of that video that Andy mentioned, and there it is, comes up at the top. What's PC specs do I need to run SDR Uno and my RSP? And there you see a little YouTube video symbol, and if you hover over it, you get a bit of a descriptor of what it's all about. So that's a good way to access the video answering that question about PC specs.
So it's a great way, actually, isn't it, of learning and doing some stuff with software, as well as the radio side of it being a great value way of using an SDR for your hobby. It's a really good way of playing, if you like, to sort of play around with APIs and software and stuff like that.
Well, a lot of people have Raspberry Pis. I mean, I've got Raspberry Pi Zeros, and I've got all sorts of Raspberry Pis that are filling shelves, filling drawers. I mean, we get these things. And
I'm guilty too.
We get these things, and we have great ideas that we're going to do this and that with them, and then we kind of, we don't have the time, and they go in the drawer and get forgotten about. So I think one of the things I'd like to do in the next couple of weeks, I think, whilst we're all sort of in this kind of lockdown scenario, I think we're gonna do some videos, and maybe some of the things we'll do is, what can we do with an RSP? What can we do with an RSP and a Raspberry Pi? And then we'll maybe have a bit of a chat about some of the software that's out there and how it works, and maybe try and inspire some people to maybe pick up the Raspberry Pi again and have a go at a couple of projects.
Again, we're always trying to attract younger people into amateur radio, and so there's all these bored teenagers locked up at home. If they've got a Raspberry Pi already, get them even a cheap dongle. But certainly RSP1A is a great way to suddenly explore this wonderful live, vibrant thing, which is the radio spectrum, which I think they'll find it refreshing compared to the rather sort of sanitized or dangerously sort of manipulative world of the internet. So it's very refreshing. I've got an 8-year-old grandson, in fact, and he's been playing with an RSP1A, and it's incredible. 8 years old. I mean,
yeah, it is incredible, isn't it? Jacob 20FTX says thank you very much for the answer, as so did Matt. Got another question here from Ray G3XLG. I appreciate that the products are receivers, but if using with a transceiver as a PAN adapter, can you click on a signal displayed by the SDR, and will this then retune your transceiver to that signal, e.g. with an Elecraft K3S?
Yes, that's very much the role of a program called OmniRig, which works in conjunction with SDR Uno and indeed other third-party software. I don't know if you want to say a bit more, Andy.
I think the best thing there is both Mike and Steve have done some great videos on our YouTube channel and in the applications catalog again, of using SDR Uno in conjunction with transceivers, how to connect them up. Because you've got, obviously, do you share the main antenna? Do you take the RF out at the back? or does it have an RF out at the back? Do you use an IF out? And what are the differences with using IF outs and RF outs, and what are the limitations and benefits?
Other ways to protect it.
Yeah, and you've got to think about how you protect the RSP when you're in transmit. It's quite easy to connect all this stuff up and then you transmit and blow the front end of the RSP up because you transmitted power straight into it. So I would say the best thing is to have a look at some of the videos that we've done. And obviously, if you still have questions, come through to our support system and ask. And ask them. You don't have to have an RSP to come through and ask us a question.
And actually, if you just go on the Facebook group, for example, and the chances are someone out there has already got exactly your model of rig, and has already done what you're trying to do, and you'll get a real practical answer from them. So.
I think certainly where third-party applications are involved, like OmniRig, like HRD and the loggers and all this kind of stuff, and how they interact with our software and our hardware, a lot of people ask us questions about them, but we're probably not the best people to ask. The best people to ask are the people that have actually used them and actually got them working. And a lot of these groups, the groups.io people on Facebook, I mean, there's over 12,000 members on our on the Facebook group. These guys have already been through the pain of how do I get all this stuff to work well together, and so they're the best people to really ask. And I've been amazed by how helpful everybody is. You get there's no stupid questions. You go onto these groups, how do I connect this to that? What's the best way to protect the input? And you'll get numerous answers within minutes. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
You've got a very big community there, haven't you? I may have missed this earlier, so if you said it, please forgive me. I was just checking everything was working all right. Roughly, how many have you sold of these, all of the models combined, roughly?
Well, we don't give out numbers as such, but it's many thousands.
Obviously, you've got thousands. A community of 12,000. No, I mean, it's obviously a very big thing.
And for everyone who joins, there's probably several that just look from the sidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray actually comes back on the question he just asked about the pan adapter. He said, I asked this question at Hamfest last year. At that time, I understood that Uno did not work with a K3S in that way, even though OmniRig, but thanks for the ideas to follow up with others.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Uno won't work with a specific transceiver directly. Uno works with OmniRig. So it's whether the OmniRig support is there for it. And if it's quite often where the problem lies is that the config, all of the configuration files for OmniRig pretty much for different transceivers are written by people who use them. They're written by, and so sometimes they have bugs in them or they have errors in them. So it could be that there's an issue with an OmniRig configuration file. I don't have access to a K3, so there wouldn't be any way for me to be able to debug what the issue was there. But it would also depend on what output you're using from the K3. If it's an RF output, I'd be very surprised if it didn't work. If it's an IF output, then we do have a particular issue with IF outputs at the moment with SDR Uno, and that is something that we will be addressing. So it depends if it's and that isn't specific to the K3. That'll be any transceiver that you use an IF output with. Uno may not be your best port right now, but it will be something that we fix. But there's plenty of other software out there that will work.
It's the wonderful thing about the community out there, isn't it? And if there's enough demand, or even if it's just one person really passionate about something, they can develop it. Yeah,
it's difficult. Sorry, I was just going to say it's difficult to be specific about support for different lots. It's an IF output. I've just seen Ray's comment there. So that's most. It's more likely to be the IF output than the actual transceiver itself. So we will be fixing the IF output support in Uno. We've had to do some other things to get to that point, which we are doing with this release. So that fix will be coming if it was related to that. But there is other software that you could use instead of Uno for that, you know, to get around that specific problem.
Okay, brilliant. And I've got Paul has just said, Paul Brooks has said, I have the DX. So that's good. Good feedback. And that is all the questions. And I think probably with nearly an hour and a half under our belts, I think we probably need to call it a day there. But John and Andy, thank you ever so much for coming tonight. I'm sorry we couldn't meet you in person, but maybe one day when things get back to normal, you'll come and see us in Norfolk. I know that John in particular was looking forward to going to see Chris Danby's set
well, that's
up
right, we were.
antennas and things.
And actually, we should thank Chris. I think he sparked off the idea that we should come over to Norfolk, and we were going to see his huge antenna setup. And
indeed,
there we go.
Well, we're pleased though that you've been flexible enough to come back as well the following week and give us another go. And we're trying to bring the club to the people at home now that none of us can really go out. So thank you ever so much. There would be a round of applause at this point, but I should think about that. Maybe we could. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We'll try and put some. Oh, thank you, Sonny.
Well, thanks to everyone who made this possible, and enjoy playing with our SDR play.
Will do, and just to remind you again that on the newsletter this week we will be giving you details of that, the offer as well from Andy and John. But just one more back to Andy and John. Say thank you very much. I promise you I'll get some more canned laughter for next time we do that. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thanks, David.
Enjoy the
Thanks,
rest
everyone.
of the evening. Thank you. And
Thanks,
just
bye-bye.
ready to thank yous then. And thanks to Sonny, of course, he's been streaming this out to YouTube. We've had a lot of questions back from YouTube as well. So it's been good for you, Sonny, as well. It's bizarre. All this information coming in, all these messages, I can see how they get muddled up on television. I've got people texting me and messaging and everything, but it's wonderful. And I hope that we've succeeded to some degree of bringing the club to you. It's important for all of us, I think, that we try and carry on with the club. We are in a hobby, after all, which is all about communications, as I said earlier. So if we can't do something like this and use all this technology around us to bring it to you, then there'll be something wrong. So if you've got any ideas for anything in the future that we should do, and especially next Wednesday night, when I hope to do something from 7:30, as you've seen, maybe we'll be able to get radio involved as well. Maybe we'll just do it on the radio. But if you've got some other ideas, we'd love to hear them, because I think, let's face it, we're going to be doing this for some time to come. So once again, just thank you to John and Andy. Thanks very much to Sonny for streaming it to YouTube. To Tammy here, of course, has been sitting here all night. She's been probably confused because she's hearing about 10 seconds later than her husband sitting a few steps away, but just to make sure everything's working. But I believe it's worked all right, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. That's it, really. We hope you've enjoyed it. Let's have some feedback. Don't forget to let me have any nets or little skeds that you have set up that you're willing to share. We can all keep in touch this time. Wish you a very good evening, and do take care and stay safe. From David, G7URP, it's good night, and from Tammy as well, M0TC. Bye-bye.